Ta-da! Okay. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. As always, I am your host, Duck, and we are episode 11. And today we're going to close up the end of the month with one last and final flower-themed episode. Just kind of wrapping up what we started at the beginning of the month, since it is spring and, flowers are popping up all over the place. Um, as Bill showcased the photos he posted with all those tulips. So hopefully you got some nice individual tulips in your inventory there, Bill. So hopefully what you learned today you can apply to some of the flower shots that you take now that the warm weather is here. So without further ado, let me go ahead and switch over here. This is what I prepared for you guys for today. Oh, hold on. Let me go ahead and share the screen, because that always helps. There we go. All right. Everybody see that okay? All right. Awesome. Okay, so this is what we got planned for today, and while it looks a little complex, it's kind of like a culmination of a lot of the techniques that we've covered in the past, some that we haven't touched in a while, and some that are a little bit more fresher, including creating new brushes and things like that. So let's break this down. All right, so this is what we're going to be doing, and this is the image that we are going to start off with. As you can see, I just took a solitary flower in this kind of like sea of green. All right, so first things first, you guys know that I like to start things in Lightroom, port it out to Photoshop, and then bring it back in to Lightroom. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and switch this over to adaptive portrait, or I'm sorry, adaptive color. The green's probably a little bit too intense, so I might want to bring that down. And I also want to probably do a little bit of cooling off on the flower. So, actually, I think I'll probably cool off everything a little bit. So we're going to go to our color mixer, and we're going to take our green saturation on the green, and we're just going to bring it down a little bit so it's not as vibrant. And the luminosity on the green, probably just a touch, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it that we need for this particular image. All right, Control or Command E will send this out to Photoshop. So this is the file. And the first thing that I want to do is, instead of the horizontal, portrait mode, I want to do more of a vertical, horizontal landscape mode. I want to do a more vertical portrait mode. I want to add some space above the flower. And I want to kind of place the center, or the flower kind of in the center between the left and right edges. All right, so first things first, we're going to go to our crop tool. Okay, and we're going to keep the original ratio, except instead of being horizontal, we're going to turn it into a vertical. And we do that just by hitting this double arrow. And it's going to, yes?
I'm sorry, I coughed.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought
The mic. No.
I
Yeah. How do you make it vertical? Now, how do you make that's a problem I've always had.
okay. So we'll go back to our original ratio. Let's see, hold on. Okay. When you first go into your crop tool, it's just going to create the boundary around the outside edge. And then of course, you know that you can move these edges, you can move the corners, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I want to keep the original ratio, but I want to turn it from horizontal to portrait. So if we go up to the toolbar at the very, very top, you're going to see where it says ratio, all right? And then you have a blank space, a double arrow, and a blank space. So here, if you wanted to, you can type in a particular ratio.
Okay.
All right. Or a specific size. If you want to go to a specific size, all right, you can just type it in. Also, if you go to the where it says ratio and drop down, you have some presets, the more standard ones, obviously. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to ignore those. But if we click on that double arrow, what that does is it toggles between horizontal and vertical. All right. So
okay, just like Photoshop, I see. Okay.
we are in Photoshop.
Okay. I've had that trouble in Light. Okay, I know how to do it in Photoshop.
Yeah. So in Lightroom, if you hit the letter X, it'll do it.
Thank you.
Okay. And then, of course, now what I want to do is I just want to reposition myself here so that the flower is more in a central location. Okay. And then I want to add space above it. So I'm going to back this out a little bit, bring this down. Oops. And I'm just going to grab it from the top edge. All right. And now if I drag it up, it's just going to stretch it upwards without expanding it from side to side, which is not what I want. But if I press and hold the shift key, or no, what is it? Yeah, the shift key, as I expand it upward, it's now going to expand it left and right as well. So it's going to keep the proportions. All right. And I'm just going to go up roughly about here. Okay. Now I am still in the crop tool. All right. And you're going to notice that in the context bar, you're going to see that it has the option for generative expand. All right. Which is kind of like the default setting within the context bar. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. And I don't need to enter anything because what I want to do is I just want it to sample the image and fill it with what the AI feels is natural for a fill. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the generate button right here and give it a second. It's going to go through the Gen AI, create the filler, and it's going to present me with 3 different options. Okay, so let me just expand this out a little bit. That's option number 1, option number 2, and option number 3. So it all depends on which one you like. I kind of like the third one. It's between the first one and the third one. I kind of like that third one. It flows a little bit natural. Okay. And that's pretty much it. I have myself a nice expanded background. Okay. All right. So let's break down what it is that I want to do. Let me get a blank layer, get myself a nice yellow color here. Okay, let me increase the size here a little bit more. There we go. All right. So what I want to do is I want to make this flower look like it's disintegrating as it goes upward. All right. And my pen is out of sync again. I don't know why it does this. This is really weird. Okay. Looks like I might have to restart Lightroom or Photoshop if it keeps doing this. All right, so we want to create an effect like it's disintegrating upward. Okay, that's why I expanded the head height above the flower in this particular image. So we're going to use a variety of techniques. We're not going to stick to one because I want to create a little bit of texture and a little bit of interest within that dissolve. Okay, so we're going to have a blur effect, a kind of like an effect of kind of like these ghostly flames, and then this disintegration pattern. All right, so that's the plan. Okay, so in order to do this, we're going to need to build it up in several layers, and each layer is going to do, you know, different things. All right, for uh, uh, for the disintegration, we're going to have some of the leaves look like they're falling apart and floating upward. Okay, so in order to get that effect, we have to make sure that we can punch holes through the petals of the flower and be able to see the greenery of the background. Okay, so if I, you know, were to let's do a stamped layer. Control Alt Shift E, Command Option E. All right, that creates a stamp layer. Okay, if I take and add a mask to that, and if we have a round brush, let me just make it a little bit larger. Let's fill the screen up a little bit. All right, black is my foreground color on the mask. All right, if I were to punch holes, all right, doesn't look like it's doing anything, even though on the mask, oh yeah, see, that's not going to work. I'm going to need to, gosh, darn it. I hate when this happens. And I believe it's, give me 1 second, guys. Let me just, let me close this off. I'll save the changes on that. Okay. Relaunch. I'm going to just relaunch Photoshop. Edit in Photoshop. Edit original. Loading up. And here we go. Okay. All right. So let's add a mask. All right. And oh, good. All right. If I add a bunch of dots, what that's going to do is it's going to create holes. All right. But because the background, all right, my background is the same as my foreground, we're not going to see a difference. Makes sense, right? So what we need to do is we need to, one, isolate just the flower, because we just need the flower. We don't need the rest of the background, okay? And we need to remove the flower from the background. So when we poke holes in the flower, we'll be able to see the background, okay? So first things first, I'm just going to utilize the AI on the taskbar and say select subject, okay? And it'll work here really, really nicely because we have a very well-defined subject, okay? And you can see the marching ants all the way around it. We're going to do Control Command J, okay? And as you can see now, we have the flower all by itself, okay? Make sense? Okay. But we also have the flower still on our background. Okay, so I'm going to, now that I have the flower selected, I'm going to use Control and click on that layer, which brings my marching ants back, because what it's doing is it's making a selection of that flower. I'm now going to go ahead and select my background layer. I'm going to expand. I need to create a little bit of room around that mask, or around the marching ants. So we're going to go select, modify, expand. Okay. And because we got a good size image, I'm going to expand by about 20 pixels, which tends to be kind of like my default at this resolution. Okay. As you can see, it's already set up here, and we hit OK. And as you can see, the marching ants have now gone away from the edge of the flower and is encroaching onto the green background, which is what we want. Because what we're going to do is go to Edit, Content Aware Fill. All right, we don't need generative fill, because it doesn't need to be perfect. All we need to do is we need to have a little bit of green. So the old standby content aware fill works just as well. And you can see the preview here on the right hand side. And we hit OK. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned that I have the output being output to a separate layer by itself. Okay. All right. That way I can still have my original image if I need to. Okay. Control Command D to deselect, or you can do this thing on the taskbar and deselect on the context bar.
Question.
Yep.
When you just did that new layer that has the flower only, and you said I did it so that, was it the way you created it? I missed that. Or was it just that part, was a part of the content aware what it does? The way it works to create it without the background, the separate layer?
This one?
Ah.
Yeah, so here let me do that again just so that, all right, you see it. Okay. So because I already have the flower cut out, I'm going to use that to recreate my selection. So Control or Command, and then you click on that layer. It brings up the marching ants. Okay. But I need to expand the marching ants outside of the subject because it needs to be able to sample that background, right? So we go to edit, select, modify, expand. All right. I usually do 20. You can do 30. You can do 40. It doesn't matter. Set OK. All right. That gives me room to sample that background from. Okay. Because what I want to do is I want to remove the flower from the background. Okay. So we go up to the top. Okay. Edit, content aware fill, which opens up a dialog box. Okay, and here's the preview. Okay, and you can keep everything pretty much the default settings. All right. We're not really need to sample all layers because there's enough within that layer. But what we need is right here where it says output to, all right, you have current layer, new layer, or a duplicate layer. We want to just create a new layer. Okay. That way it keeps the original layer, you know, kind of like, and hit OK. So that we're not really working destructively here. I don't want to work destructive. I want to work as non-destructively as possible. Okay, so we still have the marching ants. All right, Control or Command D for deselect, and now we have a clean background. Okay, so we have this layer here. Oops, this layer here. All right, which is just being used to mask out or hide the flower. Okay, the flower's still there. Okay, and then we have the flower that we cut out that now sits on top of everything. Okay, so we have, oops, yeah, make sure, there we go. This flower here by itself, okay, sitting on top of our green background, right? Which we created by just creating a mask, a camouflage patch over the original flower. Okay. All right. So what we've basically done is we've isolated the flower from the background. And now we can apply effects individually to the flower and below the flower. Okay. So now, here we go. Let's add a mask to this. Select the brush. Black is our foreground color. And now, if I poke holes in this, you can see that we can now look through that flower, all right, because we did what we did. Okay, everybody understands the reason now? Okay.
Thank you. I missed that part last time when where you exported it. That's what had me confused.
Okay.
So thanks.
Yep, no problem. All right, so let's zoom back out. All right, so we're going to do a couple of things here. First thing I want to do is I'm going to create a duplicate. Here, I'm just going to rename this flower. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and group this. Let me uncheck that. Group that, and we'll call that our, our background. BG for background. Okay. So now we have the flower and we have the background. Okay. Flower, background. Okay. All right. I'm going to duplicate the flower. So Control or Command J, right? And we're going to call that flower blur. okay? And I'm going to drop it below the actual flower, okay? So we have the flower, and then we have the flower that we're going to blur, okay? All right. Before I do the blur, what I want to do is I want to add some, it's not really like a fire effect, but that's probably the best way I can kind of like describe it. I'm just going to create these like lines that kind of look like fire. So I'm just going to get a tapered brush, all right? And if you're using a mouse, you may not be able to get a taper brush unless you have your brush setting sets so you can use the taper with the middle mouse wheel, okay? But if not, you can still do it with, just a regular, round brush, okay? But I kind of like the taper brush because it gives it this nice effect, okay? But what I want to do is I want to sample colors from the flower, okay? And they're very subtle, all right? We have some bright areas, we have some dark areas, and of course we have a little bit of this orange kind of color, but we don't need to go too crazy. So I'm just going to take a little bit of color from here, and I'm just going to come down and create a couple sample. I didn't like that one. Let's see. There we go. And can we get like a orange one? Yeah. Okay. See what I mean by it kind of looks like, a kindergartner is trying to draw flames. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, you don't need any, major artistic skills. All right. But what we're going to do is, oops. Oh, I made a mistake. See? That's what I get for jumping ahead of myself. I forgot to create a blank layer. We need to put that on a blank layer. Okay, let's try that again. Sample.
How are you? How I can't see on from my monitor how you're selecting the new colors.
Okay, so you just hover over an area that you want to sample a color. You press and hold the Alt key and then click. All right. When you click, you'll see this ring. All right. And you notice how that top half of the inner part of that ring, every time, if I go over here, notice how it changes. All right. So that's the color that you're going to sample. The bottom ring represents the color that is in the swatch. Okay. So I just selected green. All right. See that green color is now loaded in the bottom. I can now pick like off-white. Okay. If I click again, notice how the off-white is at the bottom and what I want to select is now being loaded at the top. Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. All right. So nothing fancy with this. All right. But make sure you have it on its own layer. We want it on its own layer. Because what we want to do is we want to give it a blur effect. Okay, we're going to be working a lot with blurs today. All right, so we're going to go filter, blur, and for this one, we're going to use a motion blur. Okay, and for this, we have a couple of controls. One is let me bring this over here. One is the angle All right, either you can type it in here, or you can just click and drag this little wheel. All right, and what we want to do is we want to just make it go up and down. Okay, so we're gonna just make this so that you can see that line just go up and down. Okay, or you can just type in 90. All right, and then the distance. This indicates the distance it pushes the pixels to blur. Okay, the smaller the distance, the less blur. All right, so in this case, we want a lot of blur. And as you go up, you're going to see a live preview of what the effect is doing. Okay, so here we can do, all right, that's about 200 pixels is about 250. That looks pretty good. All right. Now the thing is, all right, like those orange ones kind of disappear. Oh, let me get rid of this. All right. So we can say, well, let me add a couple more. All right. So we're going to go back to our brush. All right. I'm going to go ahead and sample that orange color. All right. And because it really doesn't show up, what I want to do now is maybe just go ahead and brighten it up so that when I paint it in, now it's a little bit more visible, right? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and because I've already given it a certain amount of blur, that value is now stored up here in our filter. All right, you see it right there, motion blur. So all I got to do is if I want to repeat what I applied previously, I just go up here and hit motion blur. All right, and you can see that it added it. Okay, and it also added it to what we had before, which I don't mind because those stand out pretty well, and I want a nice blur effect. Okay, I want it to look like things are just kind of like flying up from the flower. Okay, and it is still behind the flower. Okay, behind the flower. All right. Okay, then the reason I want this first is because when we apply the blur, I'm going to go ahead and hide the front one. Okay, you can see here. All right, when I apply blur to this flower, I want to see how it interacts with these little tendrils that I drew. Okay. All right. But we're going to use a different blur technique for the flower. Okay. Instead of a motion blur, we're going to use what's called a path blur. Okay. So we're going to go back up to our filter and we're going to go to blur gallery instead of blur and motion blur. Okay, we're going to go to blur gallery and select path blur. Okay, and what that's going to do is going to open up a dialog box, and you're going to see by default it places this arrow. Okay, what we're telling Photoshop to do here is we want to blur the flower or these pixels along the length of this path. All right. And the nice thing is we can, instead of using that little dial from the previous one, we can just click and drag the direction of that arrow. Okay. So in this case, oops. In this case, what I want to do is I want that to follow the same path as those tendrils. We're going to go upwards, okay? And you can see we have the head of the arrow here, And then we have the tail of the arrow here. And you're going to notice there's also a dot in the center. And we'll get to that in a second. Okay. All right. Off to the side here, we have all our settings. Okay. For our blur tool. Okay. We have path blur. All right. And we can do basic blur or a rear sync flash. So what it does is it kind of replicates that blur effect that you would get when you fire the flash at the end of a movement. Okay. Which we don't really need for this to work. Okay. We have our speed, which is the same as the path or the motion blur. The higher the number, the more the pixels get stretched out. We have a taper, all right? That will allow the kind of like the blur to kind of fade out a little bit. Centered blur, we'll get to that in a second. And the endpoint speed, okay? So what we have is, as I mentioned before, we have the beginning where the arrow is, or I'm sorry, wrong way. Beginning where the arrow starts and the end where the arrow ends. That's where the point is. Okay. And we can apply different speeds to those. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and increase the speed at the beginning here. Okay. And if you notice, I have centered blur selected. And what that's going to do is from this starting point here, it's going to blur up and down along that path, along this vector. So it's going to stretch it upwards and downwards. All right. Or from that anchor point in two directions along that vector. All right. I don't want it flowing downward. I want all the blur to go upwards. So I'm going to deselect that center blur. Okay. And now you notice that the blur just goes straight up. Okay. And then we're going to take our endpoint. All right. And we're going to stretch it up. And you notice that that really, really now stretches that that blur outward. Okay. All right. And we can do edit blur shapes. Okay. And what that does is, let me bring this down. Let me bring this down a little bit so you can see it. You see this red arrow here that popped up, and it popped up another red arrow here at the base. All right. That's all that does is it turns those on and off so we can see it. Those are additional controls. But before I do that, I want to explain this middle dot right here in the middle of the arrow. What we can do is we can take that and we can bend the path. And notice how that blur now wiggles. Okay. And if we wanted to, we can bring this down about 1/3 of the way along the path. And I'm going to click right on that path. All right. And as you can see where my cursor is, there's a little plus sign. All right. If I click there, it's going to drop another point. So now I can take that point and increase the curviness of my path. All right. So you notice that the blur now kind of makes that S shape. Okay. So instead of being a straight up, north to south blur, it now has a flow to it. Okay. And we can play around with these to kind of give us a little bit of visibility. All right. And then the taper, what that does is it's going to be more intense towards the start, and it's going to fade off towards the end. Okay. That's all that does. All right. I don't want to fade it off too much. I want that to be really visible. Okay. All right. Now, if we turn on the edit blur shapes, okay, we can manipulate that a little bit more to create more extremes. Okay. And they also have a little midpoint, so we can take that and modify the shape as well. Okay. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this particular tool to really give you, creative, unique shapes. And the nice thing is, I'm only working with one particular layer, one blur layer here. But let's say I wanted to create different layers using slightly different colors. I can have, like a white giving me an S shape going up. I can create a second layer, drop in like an off-white color or a little blue or whatever color, apply a different path so that now we have these shapes just going upwards and interacting with each other. All right. So feel free to experiment with this technique. All right. This is what it's all about. It's about, taking a tool and being creative with it. All right. I'm going to keep it simple because I'm going to blend different techniques for this particular image. All right. But feel free to experiment on your own. Okay. Once you get it looking the way you want, go ahead and we come up here and we hit OK. And it gives it a second. See, the wheel is turning. Actually, for some reason, my progress bar is on my other screen. I don't know why it does that. It won't let me drag it. But it's very slowly moving through, chugging along. 66%, 75, 80, 90, and done. There we go. All right. Now, if you notice that the flower is no longer as visible, that's because we've applied blur. And when we apply blur, it creates kind of like a translucency. Okay. That's why we need a copy of the flower up at the top. Okay. All right. Everybody with me so far? All right. Actually, you know what? I think what I'm going to do with that color in the background, I'm going to apply another motion blur to it because it's a little bit. Now that I see the two together, all right, we can see how, those tendrils are very, very strong. Okay. So I'm just going to apply a little bit more blur. It's doing it. Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, where is it? Come on, cancel, cancel. All right, filter, motion blur. There we go. Oops, maybe a little bit too hard. Filter, motion blur, motion blur. All right, let's just go to motion blur, and I'm just going to go ahead and increase. You know what? Let's add.
Didn't we just increase the color of that so we could see it? Just decrease the color of the
Yeah,
of
we.
the,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you would increase it so we could see it. The color of the orange.
There we go. Well, what I want to, I don't want it to be as pop. Well, actually, you know what? We're going to be adding some more stuff to it. So I'm going to leave it like this. I might revisit it a little bit more. Okay. The nice thing is it's a very simple technique. So if I look at it and it says, oh, I'm not really liking it, we can, because it's on its own layer, we can redo that layer. Okay. All right. Now for the disintegration effect. Okay. And for this, you're going to need a brush that has a kind of like a particle effect brush. All right. We played around with creating some of these brushes previously. You know, with the what was it? Our splatter brushes. Okay. Let me go ahead and create a new layer here. Let's fill that. Edit, fill with white. Okay. And so we have, you know, these particles that we can create. All right. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing of creating a brush. I don't want to take up that time. If you have a hard time remembering how to create a brush, go back to the previous episode where I showed you how to build your own brushes. Okay. But you can do a simple Google search and you can come up with a brush. And let's see, let's go ahead and delete that. And I happen to have here, I downloaded a couple brushes from the Adobe site. All right. There's a guy by the name of Kyle that he has created a bunch of brushes for Adobe that you can download for free from the Adobe site. And this is one of them. Notice how it's kind of like this splatter effect. Okay. And that's all we need is just something that's going to create a little bit of a splatter. Okay. So we have that one, and we have, let's see, I had another one. Oh, here we go. This one here that kind of looks like leaves. It's the same principle. All it is a splatter effect, and it's just random shapes. And every time you click or every time you draw a line, it's just going to rotate it, shift it slightly. All right. And in this case, what we want to do is we want to go to our color dynamics and make sure that our foreground background jitter is on. All right. Maybe about 30%. Okay. because what we want to do is we're going to fill these with two different colors. So we have a foreground color and we will have a background color. Okay. And, oh, edit, fill. We want to fill it with white. Okay. So now you can see what it's doing is it's creating a variation of shade between the foreground color and the background color. Okay. So instead of being one solid color, we have, you know, two different colors. Okay. All right. Let's get rid of that. All right. We're going to create another blank layer below our flower layer and above our, let's see, we'll call this tendrils. Just, all right, right above those little tendrils, blank layer. Okay. I'm going to reduce the size. I don't need it to be that large. Okay. And we're going to load, like I said, we're going to load two different colors. And what I want to do is I want to choose the colors right from the flower itself. So just like before, we press and hold the Alt key, and we can pick our first color. And you can see that it's now loaded it into our top one. Now we need to load to the bottom one, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on that double arrow. Or you can click on the X and it's going to toggle. So if you click the X key, you notice it'll toggle. Okay. And I'm going to select a different color. All right. In this case, a much brighter color. Okay. So now when we look at the foreground and background color, these two colors are coming straight from our subject, our flower. Okay. All right. And what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and make it look like we're getting these particles coming up from the flower. Okay. And they're going to be a little heavier towards the bottom than to the top. Okay. Now, right now, it doesn't look like anything interesting. Okay. But give it a second. Okay. So that's our first brush. We're going to go ahead and select our second brush, which was just kind of like that other splatter. I'm going to make it a little larger. And if I want to, I can go ahead and choose slightly different colors. I'm just going to just click on those swatches and just going to just alter the colors. Okay. And that's all we need. Okay. So now doesn't look like anything interesting. What we need to do is we need to punch holes in this flower so now it looks like it's being disintegrated. Okay. So what we're going to need to do is we need to create a mask. So we hit the mask tool. Okay. I'm going to go back to the previous brush, which is this one here. All right. So if you're in the brushes panel, all right, that's the one that I just used, and that's the one previously. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you notice that it loads it. Okay. Black as my foreground color. All right. Come on. Black is my foreground color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just make this a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to create these holes along the top edge. Okay, let me zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Actually, if I hide these, all I'm doing is I'm just making it look like a bug is eating just the top of these these flowers, okay? Make the brush a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to really, really just get rid of those top edges, all right? I want these top edges to not look like the edge of the flower. I want those top edges to kind of totally disappear off at the top. Excuse me. All right. Now, if you notice, okay, everywhere that mask is punching a hole through that flower, all right? And that's why we needed that green to fill that area in the background, okay? All right, we bring those back up. And now it looks like that flower is disintegrating upwards, okay? Okay. All right. But now we got a little bit of a problem, okay? Remember earlier I said that those tendrils were looking a little bit too strong? Now that I have all the effect going, I still think that they're a little too strong. So what I want to do is I want to correct that. Now, Bob, I think you're the one that said just turn the opacity down, and that's an actually good good possible solution. We just bring the opacity down to where we want it. All right, probably right around 50%, 60% looks pretty good. Okay. And what I want to do also is I want like this flower to stand off a little bit more. Okay, right now it's just because we've added all this deterioration to it, and we've added this particle effect above it. The flower is starting to become a little lost. All right, so we're going to take very simple fix, curves adjustment layer. All right, down at the bottom here. Okay, but we want to make sure that we clip that to the flower layer. So make sure you click on this little icon here, all right, and you notice that it's going to clip it to that flower layer, okay? And we're just going to increase the brightness a little bit, okay? We're losing some of the texture, so I'm going to take the dark parts and I'm going to bring that back down. In essence, I'm creating a little bit of contrast on there. Okay. That looks pretty good. Now it stands off a little bit more. Okay. Everybody see that? All right. So before, after, before, after. All right. And if it's a little bit too much, we can dial it down. There you go. That looks a little bit better. Before, after. Everybody with me so far? All right. And there we have a disintegrating flower. All right. Now the the other thing we can do, I'm going to go ahead and click on the top layer, click on the bottom layer, and I'm going to go ahead and group that. Okay, so that is our flower. Okay, so we have our flower and we have our background, our flower and our background. Okay. For the background, I think I might want to create a little bit of a vignette. Don't know. Okay. But I do want this to kind of like stand off. This by itself, yeah, it's a little interesting, but I think it needs a little extra. And if you saw the preview, the solution that I came up with was to create like a frame or a matte effect where I am using the image itself as the matte. Okay. All right. So for that, we're going to need to duplicate our background layer. So with our background layer selected, I'm going to go ahead and Control J, or you can do Control Command J. All right. We're going to call that frame. All right. And we need to drop that behind our background layer. Okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the flower and that background layer and we're going to reduce it down in size. How much is entirely dependent on you, but we can't do it just by grabbing a corner and bringing it down. What I want to do is I want to keep the aspect ratio by itself. And I also want to bring it in from all sides. All right. So using the Control, no, I'm sorry. The Shift and Alt key or Shift Option key. All right. What it does is it keeps the aspect ratio, and you notice that it now scales it from the center of the page. All right, so I'm just going to bring that in just about that. And because it's keeping the aspect ratio, we have a little bit more room top and bottom than we do left and right. So what I want to do is I want to make the top distance about the same as the left and right. So holding down the Shift key to constrain it, I'm just going to bring that up until it looks about right. Doesn't have to be exact. Okay, and we're done. All right, so now what we have, let's bring it in. We have the left, top, and right sides are about equal, and then we have a little bit more weight along the bottom. Okay, so it's a bottom heavy matte. Okay, all right. We're going to take that frame. We're going to add a levels, or I'm sorry, yeah, a level, no, curves adjustment. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to darken that down. All right. Actually, what I would suggest at this point is you can decide whether you want your matte, your frame, to be lighter than your image or darker than your image. Okay, it's going to be entirely up to you. All right, so if you want it lighter than, okay, we can just take the black point and we drag it up. Okay. If you want it darker, we take the white point and we drag it down. Okay. Now you're probably asking yourself, why not just grab it from the center and either drag it up or drag it down? All right. And the reason I don't do that is because what I want to do is when I darken it or brighten it, I want to shift that white point or the black point away from its original position. All right, so in this case, here, I'm going to just hide these two here. Oop, these two, okay? If I just take the middle point, drag it down, all right, drag it down, it darkens it, right? But you notice these highlight areas, these points of brightness, okay? We have those points of brightness because they're closer to our white point up here, okay? So these points of light were probably originally, here, let me They were probably originally like here, and then they just traveled down here, whereas our midtones traveled a lot further. Okay? That's not what we want. What we want is everything, including our brights, to darken down. And if you notice how much, excuse me, how much flatter that darkening looks, all right? All those bright points are now a lot darker, all right? I want that flat look because I don't want emphasis on this border. I want that border to kind of just disappear from being anything interesting to just being a framing element, okay? So at about 30%, okay? Now, if you want to brighten it, you just do the opposite. You take your black point and you bring it up, okay? And you notice all these areas of heavy shadow, they are no longer black. They're starting to shift towards that middle gray, okay? This is now everything that was black is now middle gray. All right, and if we go even brighter, okay. All right, so which way you go, whether you want to go brighter than or darker than is entirely up to you. I kind of like the darker than, so I'm going to go that way. Okay. Everybody understand the reason for that curves adjustment? All right. And then the last thing I need is I want to create a little bit of a bevel, all right? Because whenever you have any kind of matte, all right, with a physical print, you're going to see that there's a bit of a bevel. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little bit bevel. All right, so we're going to go to our background layer. Okay, we're going to add the bevel effect to our background layer. Okay, now our background consists of 3 different parts. We have our original image. We have the extension that we added to extend it upward. And we have this crazy flower cover up. All right, so our background is in 3 parts. So I can't apply an effect to any one of these layers and have it carry through. I have to do it to the group because the group creates our outside edge. Okay. So I'm going to select the group. I'm going to come down to the FX. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a bevel and emboss. Okay. And it brings up our dialog box. All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn, let me cancel that. Let me turn these others back on. Let's turn all those back on and turn these back on. Okay. FX, bevel and emboss. All right. It applies that default one. All right. Originally I had it so it's embossed. I think this time what I want to do is I want to make it debossed. Okay. And to do a deboss, you just got to see how my light is kind of coming from this angle. Okay. To make it a deboss, we just need to shift the angle so that it looks like the light is coming. Well, it looks like the light is coming from, oops. Oh, hold on. Edit, redo. Where's my marker? There we go. It's going to look like the light is coming from this direction. Oh, come on. Where's my yellow? Okay. So by having the light come from this direction, it's going to make it appear as if it's coming in this direction, but the panel is recessed. Okay. So we're going to FX, bevel emboss. All right. And we're going to bring it this way. All right. And then just play around with the depth, the size. Obviously, you don't want it to be too huge. All right. Chisel hard, I think, is going to be a good one. All right. And we're doing an inner bevel. All right. The other way you can do it is if you don't want to shift it, you can just do right here. We have an up and a down. All right. So you can just click on that. And it gives us the same effect. Okay. Same effect. So however way you want to do it. All right. And then you can play around with the opacity of the shadow and the highlights. Okay. So if I want the shadows a little bit more pronounced. Okay. And if I want the highlights a little bit more pronounced, you can play around with that. Okay. All right. Oh, too big. Let me break it down there. There we go. Okay. So play around with that until you get the effect that you want. Okay. The other thing I want to do is I want to kind of give a little bit more separation. And we can do this a couple of ways. Shake and bake, salt and pepper to taste. We can add a stroke. All right. So, and a stroke, all that is it's taking a rule and applying it around the outside. You can pick and choose whatever color you want. You know, usually I'll sample something from the image. Okay. Make it a little bit brighter. And then just make it so it's just barely perceptible. All right. So about 4 pixels. Okay. And that kind of separates it. But if you feel that's a little bit too strong, okay, the other thing you can do is, let me bring that back up. We'll deselect the stroke. Another thing that I like to do is look for the outer glow. Okay. And what this does is it creates, where is it? Outer glow. Let's see. All right. I'm trying to make it as visible as possible here. Okay. All right. The size. All right. So the spread is how hard of an edge or how soft. I actually want a very soft edge, about 15. That looks good. The size is how far away from that edge we go. Okay. The bigger the size, the more you're going to see that kind of like halo effect. But we also play around with the opacity. Okay. And we can also play around with the color. All right. So those are things you can play around with. And for me, that looks pretty good. I kind of like that better than a rule. You can turn it off, turn it on. You can see just, it gives it a little bit of pop, especially, excuse me, especially up on the area where the dark bevel is. Okay. Not so much where the light bevel is. The light bevel kind of stands out on its own. It's where that dark bevel meets the dark background. All right. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. All right. Questions, comments, concerns?
Nice. It's been a while since I've used that technique. I used to do that a long time ago.
Which technique?
Well, how you kind of got the framing around there with the.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's for those of you who present, excuse me. Oh, need something to drink. For those of you who submit images for competition, obviously check with the rules, but sometimes adding a digital mat to your image just makes it stand out that much more. Because if you think about it, most clubs, when you are submitting a physical print for competition, they tell you put it in a mat. That's one of the requirements for most clubs. Physical print needs to be in a mat. Okay. So it kind of sort of makes sense that if you're going to submit an image for competition digitally, add a digital mat. It just makes it stand out a little bit more.
The one thing I have to tell you about digital is that all the judges will say, and I don't always agree with judges on it, all the judges will say, make it as thin as possible. So what you just did looks great. However, you would get dinged in competition for it.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing about
maybe not for this because you did it depending on the category of creative or non-traditional, whatever.
Mhm.
This would work. This would probably work because there's there's photography behind it and it matches what's inside.
Right.
So this would work, but if you're looking for a plain frame in competition, judges will take points off if you make it too thick.
Right. So something like this where, let's pick a color from here. Make it very, very subtle. All right. And okay, that outer glow will not work for this. There we go. So, and then we just blend to color. There we go. So something like that.
Yeah. Without the white border, something like the inner border that you did would work. The bevel that you did, that would work.
Would or wouldn't?
Would work. The bevel would work. But
okay.
The outer frame would not work.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Again,
see, and for me, that's strange because if this was a physical print, you would have probably a thicker border than this.
Would if in print competition you would have a thicker board, but unfortunately,
yeah,
you know how I feel about competition.
Yeah. I'm the same way. But I trying to get into the head of some of these rule makers and be a little interesting. I think the reason they may say make it thinner is got to do with real estate on a screen. Because
probably, yeah.
If we were to take this, all right, let's go full screen. All right. If we make that frame fatter to kind of match what you would find in a physical print, that would mean that the actual image would be smaller in relation to everything. And because we have a very limited size to the screen, on some screens it may be too small. So I can,
Well, also now, some of these judges, because they judge from home, they're judging on iPhones.
yeah.
This is how bad judging has gotten,
And that's, yeah.
because you've got the issue of telecommunication.
Yep.
And some of these judges that we have, yeah, I mean, they're not as they don't buy the best, and they're not the most technical. Like, it takes them forever to fix some of these judges. It takes them forever to figure out how to use the software, the computer,
Oh,
to
yeah,
change
yeah.
the score. So some of these are not technical, and the unfortunate thing is you shouldn't have to be technical to be a photography uh, judge, but that's what's happened since COVID. So if
Right.
somebody has a phone that's 5 or 6 years old, it's not going to be good as somebody who has the latest and greatest. So
Yeah. I can see that. That's one of the reasons why my buddy Mark is working so diligently on creating a better judging software, is to address things like that, you know. But yeah, but the thing is, different clubs, different rules, different requirements.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I'm gonna be
as a photojournalist, I get frustrated over the fact that what I would get an attaboy from a newspaper editor, a judge looks at it, and I'm more concerned about pleasing my hiking buddies than I am great judges who sit in a chair, because these judges don't go into the woods. Or
right.
they don't understand. They have no effing clue about photojournalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not every photographer can be a judge. And unfortunately, a lot of clubs, here, let me shift over. Unfortunately, a lot of clubs are in a situation where they have a hard time coming up with people to judge their
They do. Yeah.
images,
Mhm.
because judging takes time. It takes effort. All right. And if somebody it doesn't have their heart and soul into improving other people's work, they're not going to put any effort into judging.
Oh,
You
well,
know?
We get good judges
who do
who
good
do good
comments.
comments.
Two things I have to say. A, we
We
have
have good
judges who
judges
come
who
in
come in
with good
with
comments.
good comments.
And,
And
whether I am judging or whether I am entering, no matter how bad the judging is that day with scoring and whatever, the best pictures always win.
Right.
So for some
For some
strange
strange
reason, the best pictures always win.
Okay. Well, that's the way it should be.
Well, if I'm going to gripe about judging and competition and
competition and
awards and
awards
all
and
that,
all
Chubby
that,
Checker should have been in the Rock and Roll
Rock and
Hall
Roll
of Fame
Hall
a
of Fame
long
a
time
long
ago. I get
I
on my
get on my
tangents
tangents
sometimes.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Bill, you're
Well,
doing okay.
but the all right. So for the longest time, I was in the same boat as you, Bill, where I I personally saw no value in entering any of my photography into competitions because it didn't do anything for me. All right. It's a pat on the back that I didn't care about, honestly, you know. But the more I got into PPA and the mechanics of getting your accreditation for master photographer, artist photographer, all those categories, they rely on certain metrics to judge your ability as a photographer to be given that classification of, master technician, master photographer, whatever it is. And the only metric they have is the competitions. Because how else are they going to measure your abilities? How many magazines your work gets published in? How many Amazon websites your work is on? No, So I can see the value for that. And then once I started getting involved with Mark and getting a lot, getting a lot more experience in judging clubs and their competitions, and getting the feedback is that the majority of the clubs really don't care about the placement as much as they care about the feedback to their images, because it's the feedback that's going to help them improve. It's not the placement. Okay. Yeah, you won first place. Yeah, you won second place. And it's like, yeah, okay, who cares? All right. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. However, if the judge says, these are the things that I feel you need to improve on, that has a lot of value.
Yeah.
Okay. So for that reason, a lot of, and that's why it becomes a more important metric when you're working towards some kind of accreditation that you enter into these competitions. Because as you enter and you start learning, all right, you first going to start getting low scores. Okay. You didn't place. You got honorable mention. Okay. But you get that feedback, and then you apply that feedback to the next time. And every time you do that, it's a step forward in your abilities as a photographer. All right. And that gets reflected by placing higher in the scoring, because now you're starting to check off all those little tick marks that were working against you in the previous images. Your abilities have improved, and now those are becoming second nature to your photography, and your photography is showing a maturity in the image making. And that's the metric that needs to be used to judge whether you are a beginner or you are a master photographer. So the feedback that I get when I judge for like the Ohio group is that, they could care less about the scoring. They want to know my feedback on those images, because that helps them achieve what they want, which is to improve in their image making.
Some groups, some of the smaller groups, they have it where the judge has to critique everything. North
Yeah.
Haven, we have it where you're allowed one or two critiques. I think it's two, because we have 100 we have 100 pictures being
Yeah.
submitted.
Yeah.
But with a smaller group, you can say, hey, critique each one.
Right. Right. And here's something that you might want to toss to them. Like, for example, this Ohio group, what they've decided to do is that rather than concentrate on the actual scores, they decided they're going to just concentrate on the feedback and use that as a springboard for discussion within the group. Okay. Because now they take, they see the image, they see the feedback, all right, and they, like any group, with an open dialogue, you're either going to agree with what's being said, okay, or you're going to disagree with what it's being said, all right. And rather than just here's the comments, bye. Here's a comment. Let's discuss it. Okay. Why do you agree with this? Okay. Why do you disagree with this? Right. And now it becomes well, I don't agree with it because I don't like it.
The one thing we do is at the end of the session, Laura asks the judges to stay, and so people could ask them, why did you do that?
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when we judge, when Laura and I and others go to judge, at the end of the session, Laura will say to that group, do you have any questions on why we judged what we did, or anything that you want to hear from us? So we do that.
Yeah. Well, if you are leaving comments, hopefully the comments are kind of answering those questions and people will, be satisfied with the comments. But if you're only commenting on one or two and not all of them, then that becomes a little bit more, especially for those who are lower in the scoring and that just don't quite understand, because one of the other things that I notice, it's part of growing as a photographer isn't just understanding what buttons to push on the camera. It's not about, the composition. It's also about understanding the language of image making, which gets into the motivations, the emotions, the psychology of what makes a good image good and what makes a bad image bad, So being able to get a feedback from somebody who's a little bit more knowledgeable, or having an open table discussion where you can start absorbing some of these comments and these descriptions and these definitions, it helps build that visual language. So, but anyway, any questions on the techniques we did today? Everybody good with that? All right. I want to see what you guys come up with. So share your photos with the group. Okay.
Cool.
All righty, guys. That's pretty much all I got for you today. Alan, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I will be joining you. I'll send you a text.
Is Alan here?
Alan is here.
Hey, Alan. I might drive up to Broadbrook tomorrow. to take pictures of the eagles. I might. And I don't hear him, but maybe
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been having problems with his speaker or with his microphone,
Okay.
and he's still having problems with the microphone.
All right. I might. I'll text you if I'm going to do it. I'm going to go over to Manchester first, but it's going to be 32 degrees in the morning. So I might not do it. See, the thing is, I haven't been going out to take pictures of these eagles because we've had cloudy skies and I want blue skies. I'm a little fussy. It's like, if you go to the Facebook page, you'll already see a white background from December. Right?
Yeah. All right. Well, me, I like anything that's got a little bit of texture. I love stormy skies. I love stormy skies. They're the best.
If I could put texture in it, it'll work. It's like we've had bland skies. I don't mind skies, but we've had bland skies in the morning. So
Yeah.
maybe if I could texture. Okay, that's a thought. They've had some texture to stuff.
Yeah. And poor Alan, we can't hear what he says. He looks like he's dying to say something, and he just I'm watching his screen, and it's like he's like, frustration. Nobody's hearing me. So, all right. Well, anyway, that's all I got for you guys. All right. We'll chat with you offline.
Okay.
Bill and Alan.
Okay.
Thank
you.
All right, guys, stay safe. We're skipping next week, and we'll see you next month.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Ciao, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.